win this game like they should, then you got to take them seriously as a Super Bowl contender.
Fair enough.
I really believe
Fair
that.
enough.
Have yourselves a great weekend. Don't forget to turn the clocks and all that stuff.
Ball
Enjoy
back.
Halloween. And we'll see you Monday morning at 11 right here again. Have a blessed weekend and God bless.
They got to go win and execute, and they can't be inconsistent. And that's the thing. It's like Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon really consistent. And then who is that fourth question mark? And there's been inconsistencies throughout. Hey, Michigan goes out to the West Coast and gets manhandled, and then they come back and then they win. Like, who's the consistent one that is the fourth?
The Bobby Carpenter Show, only on SportsGrid.
Listen, never understood a word he said, but it doesn't matter because he was able to walk into living rooms and get kids to sign. It's a little different situation with the NIL now, but the reality is he represents Louisiana. He is Mr. Louisiana. What better? You should have never fired him to begin with in this spot. So, yeah, I hope they do reconsider and bring him back.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There's a far longer track record of the Chiefs laying huge numbers and not covering them with Mahomes than anything on the contrary.
And they did that a lot last year where they didn't cover those numbers, but a lot of the time last year they didn't have Rice and they weren't fully healthy, and now they are fully healthy. And now we have an offense that has 4 viable receivers, 2 tight ends, and 2 running backs.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
24 points, and 23 rebounds. Folks, let me tell you something. That's 23 rebounds versus Tennessee. Not Tennessee Tech, not Tennessee Chattanooga, not East Tennessee, West Tennessee, South Tennessee. I don't know how many Tennessees they got in that state. That's a university. He did it against Rick Barnes' kids.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
LSU's athletic director is out, plus the latest WNBA labor talk. Front Office Sports Today starts now. Hello and welcome everyone to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories that are shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado here at Front Office Sports Studios here in New York City. And coming up on today's show, YouTube TV subscribers woke up without any ESPN or ABC. So we'll tell you how long that dispute between Disney and Google could last. Plus, the third year of the NBA Cup tips off tonight. So will this be the year that fans and players finally buy into the in-season tournament? And we have news on Mike McDaniel's future with the Dolphins and 3 big WNBA stars not playing in Unrivaled. But let's start with news on the WNBA's ongoing labor discussions with players in today's main event. As the deadline to come to terms on a new collective bargaining agreement expired on Friday, Front Office Sports has now learned that the WNBA and the Players Union have agreed to a 30-day extension, this to continue negotiations. Now, the new deadline will now be set on November the 30th. All right, let's bring in our women's sports reporter, Annie Constable. So, Annie, was this expected? What can you tell us about how this all went down here?
No, I mean, as early as yesterday, mid-morning, early afternoon, both sides had yet to come to an agreement on that extension. So the union agreeing to this 30-day extension occurred later in the evening as Front Office Sports was able to confirm via multiple sources in the league. And so there wasn't a guarantee that an extension was happening. And the agreement to reach that extension really speaks to both sides' commitment to getting a deal done. Now, whether or not they'll get that deal done in the next 30 days remains to be seen.
Now, obviously, the last time there was an intense labor negotiation was 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was a 60-day extension that they were able to get. But are there any sort of similarities to how the negotiations are going this time like there were back in 2019?
There are actually a lot of differences. The first being this negotiation period is up against the expansion draft and a huge free agency period in which a large portion of the league, all but I believe 2 players in the league, will become unrestricted free agents, 2 veteran players, excuse me. Obviously, rookies will remain on their rookie scale contracts. to our knowledge, again, the CBA, we don't know exactly what everything will look like, but the expansion draft and the slate of free agents in the new year puts more pressure on this situation because of, again, what needs to be executed, and mainly that expansion draft. Because if you're these two teams and you're preparing to market yourselves, you're preparing for your inaugural season, you're handcuffed in a lot of ways if you don't have a roster. And what I've learned from a lot of executives around the league is like they're operating as if they have the same rules from past expansion drafts. The Golden State Valkyries obviously just conducted an expansion draft last year. But the other significant difference here is there are two teams that will be drafting, which will impact rules. And so without a CBA, the league is limited in terms of what rules and what really they can say about the expansion draft, which controls how teams prepare.
Yeah, and those two new teams in Portland and Toronto. Annie, in less than 60 seconds, was there a real chance possibly that we could have either had a lockout or a strike here if they didn't come to an extension?
Yeah, I was told by multiple sources that the threat of a lockout and or strike, or excuse me, the threat of a lockout or a strike was not an imminent threat if they didn't reach an agreement on this extension. Now, whether or not it will be down the road, again, that remains to be seen. But in the present, it wasn't a situation where had they not reached this agreement, there was going to be a lockout or a strike, as soon as tomorrow. That's something that takes time, takes, obviously the ownership agreeing on if it's a lockout, the union agreeing on if it's a strike. And so, no, it was not an imminent threat as of now.
All right, the new deadline, of course, is going to be November the 30th. Annie Costabile, our women's sports reporter. Thank you so much, Annie. Meanwhile, after being publicly told by the state's governor that he would not be hiring the next college football coach, athletic director Scott Woodward at LSU announced that he would be leaving the school, with the school buying out his reported $6 million contract. Let's bring in our college sports reporter, Amanda Kristovich, who's been following this story for us. So, Amanda, was this inevitable given the fact that Governor Landry really had sort of been rebuking the athletic director publicly for a while?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that this was an inevitability at this point. I mean, look, on Sunday afternoon, after Brian Kelly was fired, there were questions about Scott Woodward's future, given that he had hired Brian Kelly, right? But I think it was really Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry's comments that, he basically said that, he had it was a vote of no confidence, as we talked about yesterday. I do want to point out that Landry doesn't have the power to unilaterally fire Scott Woodward. But he basically said, I do have the power to call the board members who he appoints at LSU, and, voice my disapproval. And I think between that and just the environment that Landry's comments had created, Woodward and the school decided to part ways. I do want to make it clear, though, it did not seem like Woodward was fired. It seemed like a mutual agreement.
Yeah, really good point. And the other thing you've told us about also is LSU does not have a president right now. This is why the Board of Supervisors is sort of running things. They now don't have a football coach, and now they don't have an athletic director. One of the most famous alum and fans of LSU, James Carville, the political commentator, actually said the reputation of our university has been damaged throughout this entire process. I mean, is this still even a coveted job right now, or is this just so much drama that who even knows who's in charge here?
Well, I do think that it is still a coveted job, and I think the amount of money that LSU is willing to pay the next coach, I think will make it an either more or less coveted job. But I do want to say that the press conference that I watched this morning introducing the interim athletic director, Verge Osberry, he really tried to take the power back. He made it very clear that there is now a hierarchy, and the hierarchy for the head football coach, he is going to be leading the search. There were two Board of Supervisors members that were flanking him at this press conference. They're going to be on the board, and there are going to be several other donors and folks at LSU. The university president, when that president comes in, they're supposed to come in or be voted on Tuesday. When that president is chosen and comes in, they will have a say, but I think Osberry made it very clear that he is in charge of this search. and he is in charge, and Landry is not in charge.
Landry has been doing a lot of press lately. I mean, he was just on Pat McAfee recently, and one thing that really stood out to me is he said, quote, "The next coach that we hire is going to have a patently different contract than that of Brian Kelly." What does he mean by that?
Well, he's upset about the buyouts. He's upset about the idea that you can pay a coach $53 million in order to fire them. And he's upset about this idea that, these buyouts are being paid by taxpayer dollars. Now, as we discussed, LSU is a public university. They do receive public funding, but the LSU athletic department is self-sustaining. And, in really no circumstances at these big universities do taxpayer dollars find their way to coaches' buyouts, because they get donors, they have their own revenues, and LSU made that clear again today. I think what is most interesting about those comments is that LSU's new athletic director disputed them. He basically said, I was told that I need to do whatever it takes to find the best coach, right? Implying that if a $53 million buyout is what they need to put into that contract, they're going to do it, no matter what Landry says.
All right, so the $53 million for Brian Kelly, the second largest buyout ever. You have the athletic director, Scott Woodward, at $6 million. In theory, if they're going to get a great coach out there, maybe a Lane Kiffin, you probably have to buy him out of his contract as well. So could this be one of the most expensive scenarios of buyout history that we've seen in college sport?
Definitely. And I think writ large, the current coaching carousel that, has been set off this, I was going to say this offseason, because usually it happens during the offseason, but no, we're in the middle of the football season. I think that we're going to reach a new level of buyouts. There have been a lot of people questioning the concept of buyouts, but ultimately, I think the train has left the station. Schools are not interested in setting a new precedent. They're interested in luring a good football coach. And in that sense, I think we're going to see an unprecedented buyout number for coaches across the board.
Yeah, we're over $160 million, I believe, right now. Yes, and going up from there. Amanda Kristovich, good stuff as always. We have more Front Office Sports Today headed your way after this.
You just see Texas in any game, and again, Kentucky used to be able to put up points in the past. 43.5 is crazy, because it just feels like Texas is going to come in, play really good defense, and try to squeeze this game out. It'll be interesting to see, because nothing got ailed from that victory last week. Texas is back. I'm just being facetious at this point. But if we see one of those performances, 17-14 Texas.
In the fourth quarter.
Yeah, come on.
Right? I mean, really. I mean, they got a gift last week.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it looks like the Bengals fantasy pieces are back. What did you make of that Joe Flacco performance on Thursday night? Turning back time.
Yeah, it was great for a guy like me with gray in the beard. I love seeing it. I love my representation. But at the end of the day, just from a wagering standpoint, if this continues, it'll give some consistency and it'll give some value back to those tools that you were mentioning on the Bengals.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Defense is above average this year, and I think big picture they're going to be probably the most consistent moving forward. The problem I have is this guy, Trevor Lawrence, big picture. You got to take the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the ugly sometimes is real ugly. He is not comfortable in the pocket on a consistent basis, and that's a problem.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It starts innocent. One bet, one boost, one thrill. You're not haunted by ghosts. You're haunted by doubt. But that's where SportsGrid brings the light when the lines get dark. The only thing scarier than losing a bet is missing a winner. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And welcome Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. Well, YouTube TV subscribers woke up Friday without any access to ESPN and ABC. This after the owner Disney's longstanding carriage dispute. This comes after YouTube TV was able to successfully come to terms with NBC and Fox just recently. So how long could viewers be out of the networks? Well, let's bring in FOS reporter Eric Fisher for more. So, Eric, why were Disney and YouTube TV not able to come to a deal here?
There's really two fronts to this. The first and main one is just straight up money, the carriage fees that Disney was seeking to continue distribution on YouTube TV. They couldn't come to financial terms, but there's also a structural component to this where Disney has its own live streaming service, Hulu plus Live TV. Fubo is actually going to, which they've just now closed majority control of, that's going to be folded into Hulu. So they have a competing service that goes right up against YouTube TV. So there's a bit of an awkward situation where they're supplying programming to a competitor. And we see these kind of overlaps all the time in the television industry, and it can get a little funky sometimes. And this is one of those funky times.
Yeah, and one of the things, according to YouTube TV, was that Disney was going to be asking too much for a lot of the programming, which then they would have to go and charge more for consumers on all of that. But this seems like these are the sort of old school carriage deals that we used to always see in terms of fights from a long time ago. Why was YouTube able to come to terms with NBC and Fox, but not Disney here? Because it seems like it's almost similar things here.
Yeah, it is similar things here, but there's sort of a pressure point because every time one of these comes up, it sort of raises the cost pressures on YouTube TV. And it's important to remember that they were kind of set up, a core part of their original premise was to be a low-cost alternative to traditional cable and satellite television. And each one of these that gets done, it just ticks up the cost a little bit much more. And now we're sort of at a point of time where the base price for YouTube TV, $83 a month, and really is looking like a traditional cable or satellite TV bill. And we're kind of at this pressure point. So some of it is just kind of timing and Disney's bad luck that they're at this particular point in line. But some of it is also, these larger issues that we've discussed.
Sometimes these carriage disputes get resolved in a matter of minutes. Sometimes they go on for a long period of time. Is there any expectation or any hypotheticals of how long this could go for?
This one seems a little bit more dug in. And it's also important to note that there hasn't been any outside public pressure from the SEC on this one. And Brendan Carr, the chairman, he was very outspoken on Fox and NBC getting a deal done with YouTube TV and really putting pressure on both sides. He's had a little bit of a lower public profile since the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing a little bit back. And so he has not publicly weighed in on this particular situation. And if he stays on the sidelines, that would sort of further amplify that we could be in for a long one here.
Yeah, and this, of course, all coming as college football and ESPN and a bunch of other big things happening on that platform for sports fans in the next couple of days. Eric Fisher, good stuff as always. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, the NBA Cup is back for its third year with new home courts, a new exclusive streaming home, and now even more prize money. So is this year that the in-season tournament resonates not just with fans, but with players as well? Let's bring in Front Office Sports reporter Colin Salau. So Colin, let's start with the money. We've now learned that the NBA is increasing the prize money here for the NBA Cup.
Yeah, I can report that the championship prize money is going to be about $531,000 for each player on the championship team. That's up from about $500,000 in the first season. That was 2 years ago, and about $515,000. So $15,000 increases for the championship team. And there's also some increases for the runner-ups and the quarterfinalists. Essentially about a 1.03 multiplier is what it is. And that's something that's written in the CBA. So we're going to expect that every single year, that you're going to see that prize money go up. And, maybe it's going to entice a little bit more people when it gets to like a nice round 550 in a year or two.
Yeah, so that's when all the players are going to be like, I'm waiting for next year. In the years past, in the 2 years that we've had the NBA Cup, it's been broadcast on ESPN and TNT. They've kind of been splitting it all up. But now with this new NBA, media package, Amazon's the exclusive home of it now.
Yeah, we're going to see Prime Video, the games on Prime Video, at least the national games are going to be airing there. So I think that kind of changes a little bit in terms of, there's been a good start from viewership right now in Prime Video. There's been kind of this jolt among fans, at least, that, hey, there's some change going on. The coverage is changing a little bit. Viewership numbers have been great on NBC and Amazon to start. I don't know how much that's going to change exactly the NBA Cup and how players and fans feel about it, but at least there is maybe an opportunity just because of change.
Yeah, let's get into that just a little bit more because, look, the NBA and Commissioner Adam Silver wants people excited about the NBA year-round, which is why they created this in-season tournament so early. It sort of had a tepid response from players the first couple of years, but do you think that now that it's in its third year and they're more accustomed to it, this year might be different?
I think, I was at the NBA Cup last year in person for the semifinals and finals. And one thing I will say about it is, when you talk up to the players who are there, Jalen Williams of the OKC Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the OKC Thunder, they were saying yeah, it's not a championship, but the atmosphere provides something to us. It gives an atmosphere of a game that matters, right? And for a team that's looking to improve, looking to take that next step, it's important to be there. Now, they lost the tournament, but they ended up winning the championship after. Giannis, who won the championship, he said it last year as well, that it was helpful for him. It's a game that matters, and it's important for the team to get there. So yes, the money matters, but I do think that the players are starting to realize that it's nice to have a game where they do get up for it. They do feel that big game anxiety, because it helps their team very early on.
Yeah, and as long as Darvin Ham is involved, he's the lucky charm in all this. He's won the NBA Cup the last 2 years. In the last 60 seconds, Colin, we got with you. What group stages are you most intrigued by?
Wow, it's really the C groups for both West and East, I think, that are very interesting. On the Western Conference, you have 4 teams above 500. That's the Nuggets, the Warriors, the Blazers, and the Wembanyama Spurs. All great teams. And then the Rockets are the one team that are at 500 with the new look Rockets. And in the East, you have the defending NBA Cup champions, the Bucks, and just a bunch of teams that are doing really well, including the upstart undefeated Bulls and the good look Miami Heat. So I like those conferences right now.
Yeah, going to be exciting to watch all of this. Colin Salau, thank you so much. And coming up next, everyone, 3 WNBA superstars are not going to be playing this year in Unrivaled. We'll tell you who they are next.
You see this team, and they're talking about A.J. Brown still. It's an injury. We want him. Are we going to ship him? This situation has to play out in the sense of, I think he wants to be there, but at the end of the day, you can't disrupt the locker room every single week. And the Eagles need him to be there if they're going to make a Super Bowl run.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The playoff matchups for Asher Genty are not great. We start to look ahead. I know it's early, but it's not that early. So Genty, I think, is still a better long-term guy than it is maybe a redraft situation, especially with the schedule maps out. But I don't see a lot of games where he's potentially in a situation where the Raiders are ahead and running the football a ton, if you know what I mean. It's kind of tough out there for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Are they chanting? Is it over? Does he
They'll be
accept
gone by
resignation?
halftime. No,
are they chanting fire?
Probably.
Kelly, clap,
it would be warranted. It would be. I mean, you won a national championship in 2019. You're getting top 5, top 10 recruiting classes each and every year. You had the quarterback back to back to back to back. How many more chances are you going to get? I mean, really, what are we doing here?
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
One playoff win, and it's been a train wreck in every other year. But if we all agree that he was right in how he handicapped the quarterback talent coming out of that draft, and they got the right guy, and I think we all do agree on that, then what's the benefit of bringing a totally new voice into the room to now be the coach of Jackson Dart?
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Front Office Sports Today, and let's get you caught up on some of the other stories we're following for you over at the FOS Water Cooler. And let's head on over to the banana stand in our control room. That's where our senior producer, John James, joining me to chat some of these stories. I love the Halloween costume.
Thank you. It's a big hit. It showed up in my closet one year, and I've kept it since. Yeah, I'm not sure where it came from, but it's a big hit. You look great too, by the way. Happy Halloween.
Thank you so much. I didn't shave today specifically so I could be an aging quarterback like John Elway.
You're pulling it off. I wish I kept my stash too.
Let's start in the NFL, James, where calls for a coaching change only grew louder. That after getting thumped by Lamar Jackson and the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. The Dolphins are saying that Mike McDaniel will stay on as head coach for the remainder of the season. That according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Now, the 2-7 Dolphins did, however, part ways with Chris Greer. That's their general manager since 2016. That as the NFL trade deadline approaches on Tuesday. So no word on if the Dolphins are going to be very active on Tuesday, Shames.
I don't imagine they will. I think this season is kind of, it's out of reach at this point, any sort of playoff berth. Surprised that McDaniel's is not getting the action.
Meanwhile, WNBA stars Sabrina Ionescu, Angel Reese, and Brittany Griner will not return to play in an unrivaled second season. This is the 3-on-3 basketball league announced that Dominique Maloney, Rebecca Allen, and Ari McDonald would take the final 3 roster spots. Now, Angel Reese was Unrivaled's Defensive Player of the Year, this after leading her squad to the first ever championship last season. The second season of Unrivaled is beginning in January, and 80% of the rosters will be made up of all WNBA first and second teamers, but no 3 big ones, no Caitlin Clark, no Asia Wilson. But you do have some other good ones, like Paige Beckers is going to be in there.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to be excited about. We don't know exactly why Angel and Sabrina and that crew, they're not returning for the second year. It does kind of make me think, Baker, we've talked a lot about if Unrivaled could surpass the WNBA as the premier league.
All right, let's move to the NBA, as nobody has started hotter this season than Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs, who are off to their very first 5-0 start in franchise history, which also just so happens to be the team's 50th NBA season this year. Wemby is averaging 30 points and 14 rebounds per game so far. And James, it's also crazy to think the Spurs have won 5 NBA championships, but have never started 5-0.
It is crazy to think about, and it kind of makes you wonder what's coming this year for the Spurs, who were kind of thought to be this fringe playoff team, maybe a play-in team or a lower playoff seed in the West. This might be their time. And by the way, this also might be Wemby's time. I think there is a legit case, Baker, that he is the best player in the NBA right now. I would probably take Nikola Jokic still at the moment. But it's very close, and it's probably shrinking every day. Someone who can impact both ends of the court like that, he just looks so dominant.
I mean, it's beyond crazy, and I think a lot of people thought, you're right, that the Spurs might be on the sort of the bubble side of getting into the playoffs this year. But if they've got a full year now of De'Aaron Fox and Stephen Castle and Wemby, wow, that team is going to be really, really good to watch.
Oh, and by the way, Baker, the NBA loves how Victor Wembanyama is coming out in a big way right now, especially as we're starting the year with no LeBron, another big star that people can gravitate towards. Great for the league.
Maybe those 2 extra inches he added over the offseason have really helped out. Yeah. All right, let's move to the World Series. It's heading back north to Toronto for Game 6 Friday night, with the Blue Jays just 1 win away from their very first title in 32 years. Now, Game 5 was viewed by 7.2 million Canadians on Sportsnet, and that made it the most-watched Blue Jays game in history.
Yeah, what a great matchup, Baker. We got the 2 aces here for, what's really the Dodgers. That's their last-ditch effort here to try and extend this series to 7 games. You mentioned the viewership. How about the ticket prices? According to our friends over at TickPick, $877 was the get-in price after the Blue Jays went down 2-1, and now $1,500 to $2,000 is the get-in price for the Blue Jays up 3-2. The most expensive sporting event in the history of Canada. Only Taylor Swift, as we understand it. A Taylor Swift concert will bring you up more than that.
Yeah, I think the Taylor Swift average was $2,300 a ticket at Rogers Center. But either way, it's going to be going crazy. So what are we watching tonight? I'm assuming the Game 5 tonight.
The World Series is a big one for me. A lot of my teams in action. I'm a growing Blue Jays fan right now. They're kind of the team I've taken an interest to. So we got my Jays.
Yes.
We've got my Celtics taking on the Sixers in some NBA Cup action at 7 p.m. The Celtics looking to capitalize capitalize on their little 2-game winning streak right now. Sixers playing great basketball too. Lakers, Grizzlies, 9:30 on Prime as well. And then over in college football, you got my Syracuse Orange taking on the UNC Chapel Bills tonight,
Yes, Chapel Bills.
which will be. I'm not going to watch 1 second of that. There's no part of that.
I think early on in the season, maybe that became must-see television, but both of those teams that combined 5 wins for both of them this year, really sort of not must-see TV tonight, even though it's on ESPN.
Yeah, ACC football on a Friday night when the World Series is on. No thanks.
By the way, we're both in New York City this weekend. It's a wonderful weekend for the marathon.
Yep. I'm excited. Hopefully, I'll see you there on Bedford Ave, Baker. I think we'll maybe have some hot toddies or something, depending on the weather. But big weekend. One of